My name is Rachel Thompson. I'm 38 years old, and I work in business consulting. On paper, it sounds stable, even something to be proud of. But in my own family, I'm the one no one really talks about. Not because I've failed, but because I'm not the most impressive one. At family dinners, the conversation always circles around someone else. Their achievements, their big plans, their ambitious dreams. And me? I sit there, listening, smiling, slowly learning not to interrupt. It's a strange feeling when you're trying your best every single day, building a decent, honest life for yourself, yet the eyes of the people closest to you never seem to rest on you. For more than a few seconds, no one calls you a failure, but no one truly sees you either. I used to think, if I just did better, tried harder, one day they would look at me differently. But then I realized, some roles in a family are quietly already assigned. And me? I'm the one standing just outside of what they call pride. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, comment 1. The one who's always at the center of everything in my family is my older brother, Daniel Thompson. He's 3 years older than me. Tall, confident. The kind of person who walks into a room and instantly draws every eye. We grew up in Seattle, in a small house near Queen Anne. On winter evenings, we'd sit around the dinner table together. Outside, the rain would tap softly against the windows, and inside, the conversation was always the same. Daniel just signed a new deal. Daniel's expanding his project. Daniel has real vision. My mom would say it, her eyes lighting up. My dad would nod, full of pride. And me? I sat across from them, a warm glass in my hands, quietly listening, like an audience member in my own family. No one was trying to hurt me, but somehow, that made it heavier. Because you can't blame anyone for something they don't even realize they're doing. There was a time I tried to speak up. I started sharing about a project I had just finished, a small company I helped pull out of months of losses. But before I could even finish, Daniel began talking about his next investment plan. And just like that, every eye shifted away. Have you ever been in the middle of speaking and suddenly realized no one was really listening? I still remember it clearly, an autumn afternoon when I was 15, back when my family temporarily moved to Chicago for my dad's work. It was cold that day. The wind swept through the streets near Lincoln Park. Yellow leaves scattered across the sidewalks. I walked into the house, holding a test paper in my hand. Not perfect, but it came from nearly a month of late nights, studying on my own, fixing every mistake, one by one. I stood in the kitchen, where my mom was making dinner. I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "Mom, I got my test back." She looked up for a second, then turned back to the pot.
That's good. That was it.
A few minutes later, Daniel walked in. He tossed his backpack onto the chair and said he had just scored nearly perfect on an important mock exam. The air shifted instantly. My mom turned fully toward him, her eyes lighting up. She started asking questions, one after another. My dad joined in too, his voice filled with pride. And me? I was still standing there, holding my paper. But no one asked me anything else. In that moment, I understood something very clearly. Not every effort gets seen. And not everyone gets recognized, even when they deserve it. That night, I sat alone by the window, looking down at the leaf-covered street. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because I was already getting used to the feeling. Do you remember the first time you felt like you weren't good enough? Years later, I left Chicago and moved to Austin, a loud, energetic city where no one knew who I was. And somehow, that felt like relief. I got to start over. A small shared office near South Congress, a simple desk, and my first 2 colleagues, Kevin Brooks and Laura Mitchell. We didn't have big clients, no reputation, no spotlight. Just struggling businesses, the kind no one else wanted to take on. A cafe losing money even though it was always full. A family shop that couldn't control its costs. a construction company that made money, but couldn't keep it. I worked with them line by line, number by number, not to impress anyone, but to actually solve the problem. There was no applause, no articles written about us. But one by one, clients started coming back and bringing others with them. It grew slowly, but it was real. Some nights, I sat alone in the office, staring at the numbers in front of me and quietly asking myself, is this enough? Not enough to prove anything to my family, but enough to prove something to myself. Are you trying to be recognized by others, or just trying not to disappoint yourself? While I was quietly building my life in Austin, Daniel Thompson became the name my family talked about every single week. He moved to Los Angeles and launched a high-end event company called Horizon Peak Group. His social media was filled with glowing lights, fine wine, celebrities, and grand openings in Beverly Hills. My mom saved every article written about him. My dad talked about him with pride, as if it was a victory for the entire family. Daniel is building an empire. One day, it's going to be huge. I heard those words through the phone, in short calls where, somehow, no one ever really asked about me. From the outside, Daniel's life looked perfect. Until one afternoon, I met Sophia Reynolds, a partner in the service industry, at a small cafe near Santa Monica. She said something casually, like it didn't really matter. Daniel's venues have been a little slow with payments lately. I nodded, didn't think much of it. Cash flow issues? That's normal in this line of work. But then, a few days later, I heard the same thing from someone else. And then again, the numbers in my head started to connect. A pattern I recognized, but something about it didn't feel right. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something was wrong, even before you had proof? I couldn't ignore that feeling. A few weeks later, I flew to New York. Officially, it was for a client meeting. But the truth was, I needed to see things for myself. On my first morning in Manhattan, I sat in a small cafe near Soho, opened my laptop, and started going through everything I could find. Business records, loans, companies connected to Horizon Peak Group. At first, everything looked fine. But the deeper I went, the less the numbers made sense. One asset used as collateral, showing up in multiple filings. An investment that was recorded, but with no real cash flow behind it. Financial reports that felt more like a performance than a reflection of reality. That afternoon, I met Ethan Cole, an investor who had worked with Daniel, at a small office in Midtown Manhattan. He didn't sugarcoat anything. We never received full reports. And the profits, they never showed up. I didn't respond. I just wrote everything down. When I stepped out of the building, I paused in the middle of the avenue, surrounded by people rushing past me. The city was as loud as ever, but in my mind, everything had shifted. Daniel wasn't just struggling. He was hiding something much bigger. And for the first time, I didn't want to stay silent anymore. If you discovered someone in your family was doing something wrong, would you stay quiet or speak up? I hadn't even decided what to do yet when something else happened. That weekend, I flew to Boston for my mom's birthday, back to our old house near Back Bay, the kind of place where everything somehow feels the same. Dinner that night was familiar. Warm yellow lights, the soft clink of silverware, and the conversation still revolving around Daniel. Your brother just got another article about Horizon Peak. Daniel's planning an even bigger event this time. My mom said it with pride in her voice. Then she turned to me, just for a brief moment. So, you're still working on those small projects? I didn't even get the chance to answer before Daniel jumped in, talking about an upcoming gala on Newbury Street, how he'd be inviting major investors and high-profile guests. I turned to him again. I sat there, quiet. But this time, it felt different. Not sadness. Clarity. I knew what they didn't know. I knew what was hiding behind everything they were so proud of. When dinner ended, I stepped outside alone. Cold air moved through the quiet street. And there was only one thought in my mind. If the truth isn't spoken, it doesn't disappear. It keeps destroying everything. If you knew a truth that could bring everything down, would you have the courage to say it? 3 days later, I was back in Los Angeles. Not as Daniel's sister, but as someone ready to face the truth. The gala was held at a luxury hotel in downtown Los Angeles. The grand hall shimmered with light. Expensive suits, glasses of red wine lifted gently to the sound of soft music. The event was called Aurora Foundation Night, a foundation that, according to everything I had found, didn't legally exist. I wasn't invited. So I bought a ticket under my company's name. I walked into the room, passing unfamiliar faces, until I saw Daniel on stage. Confident, exactly as always. Standing beside him was the host, Lily Grant, a familiar name in LA's event scene. Everything was perfect. Until I heard my mom. She was standing near the front table, leaning toward someone beside her, her voice soft, but clear enough. Rachel? She just does small things. Nothing compared to Daniel. That sentence, it didn't hurt anymore. It only made me certain. I tightened my grip on the folder in my hands. The evidence, the numbers, the truth. And when Lily Grant opened the floor for guest remarks, I stood up. No rush, no hesitation. If it were you, in that moment, would you stay seated or stand up? I didn't raise my voice, but it was steady, clear enough for the people nearby to turn. Before we continue, I think everyone deserves to know a few things. The room seemed to slow down. The lights were still bright, the music still playing, but the attention began shifting toward me. I took a few steps forward, stopping in the aisle between the tables. Across the room, Daniel looked down at me. His smile faltered, just for a second. My name is Rachel Thompson, I said, calm. And over the past 4 years, I've transferred more than $60,000 to the man standing on that stage. A ripple moved through the crowd. I opened the folder in my hands. Bank statements, emails, numbers that didn't lie. I was told that money was to support the family, but in reality, not a single dollar ever reached where it was supposed to go. Lily Grant froze beside the stage. At a nearby table, Victor Hayes stood up, his expression shifting in an instant. I continued, my voice even, controlled. And the Aurora Foundation doesn't legally exist. The donations being collected tonight are being taken under a name that isn't real. The room erupted into murmurs. Chairs scraped. Voices rose. Daniel stepped down from the stage and walked toward me, his voice low. You don't understand all of this. I looked straight at him. For the first time, I didn't look away. If it were you, standing face to face like that, would you step back or take one step closer? That night didn't end with applause. It ended in a long, heavy silence. 2 weeks later, I flew to San Francisco at the invitation of a lawyer, Jonathan Reed, whose office was near the financial district. What happened at the gala spread faster than I expected. 3 major investors filed lawsuits. Accounts linked to Aurora Foundation were frozen, and the name Daniel Thompson was no longer spoken with admiration. I didn't feel victorious. It was more like everything had finally fallen back into its rightful place. One afternoon, I received a message from my mom. Can you come home? We met at a small cafe in Palo Alto. She looked at me for a long time, as if, for the first time, she was really seeing me. No comparisons. No distracted glances. Just one simple sentence. I didn't understand you. I didn't blame her. Because some things, people only find the courage to face when the truth finally surfaces. That night, I walked alone under the streetlights. And for the first time in years, I felt lighter. Not because I had proven anything to them, but because I no longer needed to. If you had to choose, would you live for other people's approval or live without betraying yourself?